Welcome back to A Bite from the Money Sandwich, where we provide practical and easy to understand tips and ideas on how to manage your money better, so as to let you retire with comfort and on your own terms. A big part of this podcast is to help you get better with your money and to get your money working harder for you through income-producing assets like shares, property, and your superannuation. Last podcast, I spoke about the current property market, and today's episode is all about superannuation. So regardless of whether you're in your 20s or 30s with retirement seeming so far away, or in your 50s or 60s with retirement just around the corner, it is important to get the most out of your superannuation and have it working harder for you. Today, I welcome Peter Hogg from Aware Super. He is Aware's Head of Advice, Experiences and Enhancements, and we will be talking all things super, financial freedom and retirement. Our show, and so welcome, Peter.
Yeah, hi, Mark. Good to be here.
Well, Aware Super has been doing some great work in this area, looking at different age groups and how they can help with this. And you've actually brought up this thing about a spring clean. So why is Australia taking an interest in super at the moment for Australians and their members?
Yeah, thanks, Mark. The spring clean work that we're doing at the moment it's interesting because we did a recent bit of research and we saw that retirement planning as a concept had really spiked from winter, and we'd seen a 50% increase in the amount of people searching for that. And we think there's some sort of alignment with planning for the summer holiday after a big year, and people starting to think about, well, maybe it'd be nice if I had an extended holiday, or maybe retirement is something I need to start thinking about. So there's some sort of alignment that plays out there. And we certainly, when people are thinking about retirement, we certainly think it's a great opportunity to think about some of the basics, some of the spring cleaning things you could do to get you in a better position for your retirement and build that confidence. So that's what spring clean's all about from our perspective.
It's interesting. That's a really high stat. The amount of people just checking on their super. I know a lot of people, because spring is the best time to sell property. I know a lot of my clients, pre-retirees or retire, downsizing, so they're looking at what the value of their property. So maybe it also corresponds with how they're looking at their super. But on the other side of it, younger Australians, I do a lot of lunch and learns to corporates, and you really are seeing that they're more increasingly worried about not having enough for retirement, or financial security was really that word security was a really hot topic on the day. So what's your advice, especially regarding super, to help them get better?
Yeah, look, it's always for me about, thinking about something that's 20 or 30 years in the future is really hard to do. So particularly at the moment, high cost of living and different pressures, it's hard for people to really sort of imagine what retirement would look like for them in 20, 30 years. And why would you want to do too much about that now? But we think that there's some really good things that you can do, even if you are a long way from retirement. Obviously, contributions is great. The power of compound interest and all those sort of things sort of will help build your super savings over a long period of time, which would really enhance your retirement outcomes in the future. But also recognise not everyone has money to put away. So some of the things you can do in the younger years when you've got decades before retirement, one of the things we look at is obviously investment choice. You've got time on your side, and as a young investor or someone that's got a long time frame to invest, things like growth and risk is actually a really good thing for you, because you can ride out cycles, you can take advantage of the peaks and troughs in markets. And if you look historically, the more risk you're willing to take, obviously you need to understand that, but the more risk you're willing to take, the greater returns you'll be over the long term. And we think that's a really powerful way to build your retirement savings, by making sure you're invested in the right way. And then maybe like the other thing, I know it sounds really, really simple, but even just engaging with your super fund and understand where your money is. If you've got multiple accounts, usually it's a good idea to clean that up and have it in one fund and one place where you know where it is. And just understanding the mechanics of it can really open your eyes to some of the opportunities that might be there now or into the future as contribution options come to life.
Yes, because I know the ATO taking over Lost Super, and the beans that are sitting in there. It's just ridiculous how much people who don't realise how many super funds they may have. Every time they had a job, they had a super fund, and they could have multiple super funds. I know there's been legislation, and it's far better now than what it was. But one of the things that really, what you started about is looking at the investment, where your money is invested. And to me, that's just singing my song, because I help a lot of younger people, and I say, if you can get an extra 2 or 3% on average, and we always look at, it has to be at least a 10-year. Don't ever look at a super fund and look at 1 or 2 years. You must look at 7-10-year timeframes to get a good average. An extra 2%, it doesn't seem like much, but over 20 or 30 years, that can nearly double your superannuation. So, without having doing anything but taking a bit of interest now and where your money is invested. Because, I saw some recent stat that some like 80% of Australians are sitting in their balanced or default fund, and they've and if you don't take an interest, it will sit there. Whereas, as you said, you could have a higher looking at a growth or a higher growth option, because you've got time on your side. You may as well get your money working harder for you. So no, it's a really good point. I'm glad you made that. For those a little bit older, for say who are pre-retirees, and a lot of people I know, enjoy work, so they may not want to retire, but they may want to slow down. So let's just take pre-retirees, anyone in their 50s or 60s, and maybe transitioning. What's some of the top tips or top things that they should be looking at when they relate that to their superannuation fund?
Yeah, look, a couple of things I think we think are really important at this age group. So as you sort of approach your 50s, I spoke earlier around it's hard to sort of imagine what retirement might look like. We think a great starting point for someone in their 50s and 60s is to really start to think about what retirement might even look for them. What sort of income needs might they have? What are they going to be doing in retirement? Is it the luxury travel, or is it the caravanning? There's all those different options that are going to be different for everyone. So really getting a good understanding, or starting to build the understanding of what it might look like, can actually really help you when you start making sort of financial choices, because, depending on your circumstances, your financial needs will be quite different. So really just understanding what retirement might look like for you is a great place to start. At that age, look, again, depending on the circumstances, but it's really the time where we would generally see sort of increased contributions, taking advantage of your salary sacrifice caps where you possibly can. Hopefully things like your debt is under control, and sort of you've got more free cash flow potentially. The kids may or may not have moved out of home, so you might have a few less expenses. So it's really the time to accelerate those contributions and start using those tax concessions where you can. And there's some other opportunities that really open up as you go past age 60 around transition to retirement, different things which we can chat about a little later. But contributions, thinking about retirement and what that might look like for you. And then probably the third one is, start to access some help. Super funds like Aware Super have a whole range of educational resources. You've got some advice you can get at no additional cost. Really just start to put your toe in the water and start to learn about what might be available for you. And just understanding those options is really important at that stage.
Yeah, I think you've actually said a few things there. And if I take the last one first, getting advice. For a lot of people, you only get a chance to retire once. And you don't know what you don't know. You're not going to put a pool in your backyard. You'd get some expert help if you wanted to do that. So this, apart from your home, could be the biggest amount of funds you're sitting on. You want to be able to get as tax effective as possible income stream when you retire. And secondly, to know what's available to you, because I know a lot of people, when I was or still advising or still coaching clients, a lot of them have this mentality, okay, I'm now 65, I don't want a share market crash, so I'm going to move all my money to cash. And, I was told a long time ago, the greatest risk isn't where you invest your money, that you could outlive your money. And we're all living longer, 20 or 30 years. You can't just put your money straight into cash. You need to get help, get coaching, and understand how this all works, because you want this money to last for you. So getting help is a really important one.
Yeah, look, completely agree with that. And it goes to my point around, taking that first step in terms of learning the basics, So there's lots of free stuff you can get. Often super funds will, do webinars, and I know where Super has webinars, education, help on the website, and even, access to some free personal advice, which can help you build confidence around actually how does super work, how does the investment markets work, and to your point, hopefully for most people as they go into retirement, it's a 25, 30-year horizon. So you do need to think about investing for that 25 or 30 years. And what's really brought that to life in recent times is the impact of inflation. The cost of living's going up, prices people are looking at going, wow, a couple of years ago, it didn't cost me this much to do the grocery shopping. Yes. And so the best way to combat that, whether you're in your, 20s or 30s, or even, as you're going into retirement, is to use growth assets and use investing to combat and offset that. So you can take advantage of long-term returns to really offset that impact of inflation. And you'll need to do that in retirement. And we certainly encourage people to think about the impact of inflation and the cost of living over a 20, 30-year period. And that's why it's important to get that coaching and support from, say, a financial advisor or however you want to access that, to really understand the ups and downs and the ways that investment markets work.
And especially, usually the first question, will my money last? An advisor, if you get, and I'm sure the people you have there at Aware Super can project that out for them. Based on where you are and based on this interest rate, this money will provide such and such income for such and such years. And that really, for a lot of people, they're actually in a comfortable position. They just don't realize. And so having that sort of thing, that's one of those, they can breathe out, so they can relax, and that's a really important part that people like Aware can help you with. Another thing, from one of the first points you made about what does retirement look like, and I think that's such an important point, because so many people that I saw, they just worry about the financial, and yet, what's the new community you're going to be part of if you stop your work community? For a lot of husband and wives, they haven't actually spent 24 hours together for a long period of time, or the kids, as you say, maybe at home, or eventually, hopefully, will be empty nesters. What will actually retirement look like? And I think it's a really important thing that people sit down, because sometimes people get to retire and I was working and now I'm not. And it's a lot of people, they need to get their head around that. So getting some advice, getting some help, or even just talking to your partner about that is a really important step in this whole retirement step.
Okay. Yeah, look, just on that, please. I think it's a really interesting one. And obviously a lot of people go to a financial advisor to get, great strategies and sort of technical advice about the things they should be doing. But, one of the interesting things we see is that the really crucial conversations that play out, things like, your role as a carer for grandchildren, like, is more and more a thing these days with the cost of childcare, more, both members of a family working, so the role of childcare in retirees, I think, is dramatically changed in the last 10 or 15 years. And so what does that mean for you? Has that been a discussion you've had with the kids, that sort of stuff? And your point around the partner, I'm an advisor myself. I can't tell you how many conversations when we start talking about retirement planning and the options available, and the question of, well, actually, do you guys align with your thinking?
Yeah, it's amazing how often that happens. Yeah,
it's a really interesting one. So even just opening up that conversation and starting to get aligned on those things with your partner, is really crucial to the whole retirement planning piece as well. Yeah.
And for a lot of people also now, people say, you talk to people in their 30s and 40s, well, they talk about, I can't wait to stop work. But when you get into your 60s, the amount of people saying, well, actually, I'm really enjoying work. I may not want to work as hard, and maybe 2 or 3 days a week is all I want to do, but I actually enjoy it. It gives me meaning. It's what I do. And I say, absolutely fine. But your superannuation can help you with that. You can transition. And you've said it a couple of times already about the transitioning. I think that's probably a really important point. Plus also explaining how it is actually a legal tax haven, the only legal tax haven we have in Australia, where you can, once you're retired over 60, you can move it into an income stream and pay zero tax. So it'd be really good to unpackage that a little bit too, if you wouldn't mind, Peter, but also that you can transition as well.
Yeah, so maybe to the point around, that tax haven nature of superannuation after 60. So yeah, you're absolutely right. Once you're retired over 60, if you're at that point and you're ready to go and you're confident you're in the right position to do so, yeah, so maybe taking a step back, when your money's in superannuation through your working life, in accumulation, as it's called, the fund will earn returns, but there's a requirement still to pay up to 15% tax on those earnings. So I guess a simple calculation we could put there is the fund might earn 10% on the investments, but 15% that would have to go. So your net return comes back to around 8.5%. That same investment, those same returns in the pension phase after age 60 when you're retired, you get full access to that 10%. You don't have to pay that 15% tax on that, which usually is done through the super fund. So that in itself is just a really good reason to be in pension phase versus just keeping it in accumulation. Now, there are some reasons why, there's particular strategies where people might want to retain some of their money in accumulation, and there's some real genuine reasons for that. But generally, being in pension phase makes a whole lot of sense, particularly over 65. So, we really encourage people to explore that and understand that and get that tax haven status, as you say.
And it was and there was only, I don't know, Australian Super or someone that did a report that how many millions were still, people just didn't realize that they could switch it over and get zero tax. They were still sitting in accumulation, even though they were retired and they were over 60. They just didn't know. And it goes back to why you should get some advice. It's important. Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah. Look, that's certainly a big thing across the superannuation industry. So the amount of members that are in superannuation over 65 still in accumulation phase, when the vast majority we would expect are going to be in a better position to be in pension phase. It's a real challenge and it's a real issue. And that's why funds like Aware Super are out there sort of talking about this stuff, really to encourage people to get their retirement into a better place, take advantage of these things. And it's a big challenge, but really it's something that we're up for. And we really want to make sure that people understand, it's just some of the basics and get started with it, and take advantage of things like this tax haven nature of pension.
No, so, and I absolutely applaud you for that. But also, importantly, if people did want to work, you can transition. So we should touch on that too.
Yeah, look, I think this is a fascinating one. So when we talk about the idea of retirement, I think it's changed a lot in the last decade or so. So, the traditional model of you work for 30 odd years in the same job and then you get the gold watch and you go out the door and you're retired and there you go. It's really changing. Obviously, people have multiple jobs and different things through their career, but also more and more people are transitioning towards retirement. So they might go from full-time down to part-time. They might go to maybe their career job, and then they go to maybe something they're more passionate about as they get close to retirement, and they do that on a more casual basis or whatever that might be. So we're seeing a whole lot more people transition into retirement. And the really interesting thing is for superannuation and its role in that is that once you're over 60, you can actually use your super to top up your income. So if you do go from full-time work to part-time or casual work, you could start this transition to retirement type pension, which will give you tax-free income from your super to top up the income needs you might have from working part-time. And it gives you that flexibility to transition towards, as opposed to a hard stop type retirement. But maybe the other really interesting thing about the transition to retirement idea is that whilst it can be used to transition yourself to retirement, you can also use it in those last few years of working life to really boost your super contributions. And that's where it gets a little bit technical and you might need a bit of help to navigate that. But you can access some income, you can do some more contributions. There's some really cool things you can do there to take advantage of your salary sacrifice caps and those things. And some people are even using it to sort of finish off the repayment of their debt and do different things like that. So look, those sort of concepts and ideas absolutely get some help. As I said, funds like Aware Super, we can provide you a whole heap of help and guidance as to how you could navigate that and what your options are. But the whole transition to retirement idea over 60, we'd encourage everyone to start to look at it, even if you're not going to transition, because there's these other opportunities around, boosting contributions and that sort of stuff, which we think is great.
I think, when you're at least at that age, you can see the goal, I'm not going to work forever. And I think, one of the simple strategies I just say to people is that, you may be growing assets that you're paying tax on up and that because you want to keep access to it because you're not trying. But over that 50s and 60s, you need to be transferring much taxable assets into tax-free assets in your superannuation. Why pay tax when you retire? It's simple as that. So getting help is really important. And great that Aware's doing it and other super funds are doing this and helping that, because people just aren't aware, no pun intended, on that. So, okay, so I always look at retirement in probably two stages. Once you retire, okay, we want to travel, we want to get out, as you said, we're going to get a caravan, go around Australia, whatever you want to do. But there's probably the second stage of retirement, probably in your mid-70s, 80s, and you are either slowing down, maybe even thinking of aged care situations. How does Aware Super look at that time of your life?
Yeah, so look, I probably think about this group as sort of your retirement veterans in a way, so obviously done the transition into retirement, potentially got some advice as they went into that to set themselves up in the right way. And typically this group is pretty good at being on top of their day-to-day finances, and just being in retirement, we see that more and more, electricity comparisons and all those sort of stuff. They're generally pretty good at that. One thing that we feel that always needs more support and encouragement is the point you made earlier around still investing for the future. So there is sometimes a tendency to be quite conservative in retirement, and we get that. You're not adding funds anymore, so people are a bit more nervous about taking risk. But if you've still got 15, 20, 30 years left of income requirements, then you still need to make sure you're investing in a way that takes advantage of growth and the returns that you can get from that. And there's different ways you can manage that risk. So I know with a lot of our members, they might sort of compartmentalize their funds. So they have some assets that are more lower risk, where they draw their income from, but then they have the big chunk of their superannuation still invested in a way that grows in a way that they're comfortable with, but also allows them to fund for the future. Because as you said, it's not just income requirements you're thinking about through retirement. It's also things like aged care costs, which we know can be quite substantial and can sort of sneak up on people. Like, it's not always something that is going to happen at a particular time. You sometimes need to be ready for that a long way out. So still continuing to think about investing as a long-term thing, not just a short-term thing, is really critical in retirement. And then it sort of goes to the points we were talking about earlier. Even if you are retired and sort of you feel like you're going along okay, there's still a lot of help and education that's available to you that can give you the right sort of guidance and make sure you're still on the right track and your money's tracking in the right way. I said, Where Super still helps a lot of their members that are well and truly retired, even just to do a bit of a check-in every now and then on how long their money's going to last. Sometimes, interestingly, we have to encourage or support our members to know that they can actually spend a bit more, because that conservative nature of a retirement sometimes lends people to sort of to live as skinny as they can because of the nervousness about the future. And if you can get a bit more certainty of how you're tracking, how long your money might last, there's some freedom in actually going, oh, hang on a minute, I can actually spend a bit more. I can help the kids out a bit more. I can do more, particularly while I'm younger and healthier. I can travel more. So one of the things which is awesome to see is when our advisors are able to give our members confidence that they can spend more rather than spend less, which is, sometimes feels contradictory, but is actually a crucial part of retirement planning.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point, because I absolutely met clients and they would say to me, especially the mothers, I don't want to spend this money. It's taking away from my children's inheritance. And yet, if I speak to the children, they're not wanting it. They want their mum to have the best life possible, but that's just her thinking. And just to sort of, sometimes you have to encourage. And I heard this great acronym, spend kids inheritance. If you've given your kids a good education, and yes, if you can help them financially, but you shouldn't be trying to, skimp on your superannuation in your best years of your life, but by thinking of that. I think also from when we see that, even a little bit with the estate planning, I think actually it's probably worth at this age, we're talking about this age group, a lot of them, especially if they've got a solicitor, and I understand lawyers, the way they're thinking about, they say, oh, well, just put to your estate and go there. Whereas I actually personally think superannuation funds are a wonderful estate planning tool to leave to your loved one. Because you never know what's going to happen in a will and contested or whatever, especially if it's a blended family. But if it's in your superannuation fund and you've nominated your partner as your beneficiary, it will go to them. And I think, and efficiently and quickly. And I just think that's in most cases. And that's just a really important point in your whole estate planning strategies when you're in this age group.
Yeah, absolutely. And, super funds, do a lot of work in this space in terms of encouraging people to make sure they've got nominated beneficiaries on their accounts. It's a really simple way to make sure that your funds go to where you want them to go. And usually that's to the spouse. But yeah, that's a basic thing you can do, whether you're in your 20s, 30s, or in retirement, is make sure you've got your nominated beneficiary in place with your fund. Obviously, there's circumstances where it's more complex than that and requires, some different planning and ideas. But for the vast majority, the great place to start is just to make sure you've got that in place, and it's set up through your fund. And the fund can help you navigate, in the event of that circumstance. Obviously, the fund can help you then navigate that and make sure your money does go where you want it to go at that time. So, yeah, that's a really important one, Mark.
Yeah, and I think with that whole safety net, making sure that you've got that sort of will in place, I should actually mention, where has insurance benefits. And people should make sure, sometimes it's very cost effective to have your insurance under your super rather than paying for it outside. And people just don't. And so I think part of a spring clean, you should be also looking at making sure you know how much insurance or what benefits there are under your super fund.
Yeah, that's a really good one as well, particularly when we talk about cost of living. So Aware has some great default sort of insurance arrangements, and everyone's different. So there are options to increase that cover or change that cover depending on your circumstances. And we can help you with that as well in terms of determining what's right for you. But, if you're holding insurance policies outside of super versus inside of super, there's a chance, just in terms of your cash flow and then the cost pressures, actually to think about the right way to do that. And then using super to do that, is a great way potentially for some to consider. And it's worthwhile having a look and understanding how your fund does insurance and what it's for and when it, how much it covers and all those sort of things. So yeah, you're a really good call out, Mark. And we can help you with that, whether you're in your 20s all the way through to retirement.
Yeah, no, excellent. Any final words? Because I think we've covered a lot, and I love talking about it. People obviously realise I love talking about superannuation, retirement, and all this, and could keep going. But is there any sort of like a final overall thing you would like to say?
Oh, look, the main thing for me is, just get started with these things. Yeah. It can be so overwhelming to think about, am I on track for retirement? What's that going to be? The best place to start is sort of with that first step, and we've built some really, really good digital advice tools, those sort of things that are on our website where, our My Retirement Planner, for example, you can just start to plug in to go, actually, how am I tracking for retirement? What sort of income do I think I could get? That's a really safe place to go and play, understand. It's a really good first small step just to understand how you're tracking and get a bit more of an understanding how your super works and how it's sort of shaping up for you. So take the first step. And sometimes that first step is the most important one to building the confidence to having a great retirement.
Yeah, and that tip of adding an extra 1 or 2% and seeing how much of a difference that can make over a 20, 30-year period.
It's a great small step as well, isn't it? It's a small step. You start small and you can build that up as the capacity changes. So yeah, really good one, Mark. Yeah.
I always have this final question. I hope I did tell you about it, but we always ask, what's the best piece of advice you've ever had? Is that someone from a family member or something financially? Is there something that you remember?
Yeah, look, I feel like it's sort of embedded in the way I talk about superannuation and financial advice. I think the concept of just taking that first leap, that first step, that first move towards something, and whether that's in your career, in life, in investing, I think it's such a good one. It's always the hardest one, but that first small step just can open your eyes and help you learn. And before you take that next big step, that first step just helps you start the journey. As I said, life, career, investing. I'm a big believer in just taking that first small step and getting into it and seeing where things go from there.
I love it. Thank you. Appreciate, Peter, all your time, all your expertise, your knowledge, sharing with the listeners today. Maybe we can get you back another time, but because this is such a great topic, and just appreciate you giving us your time today.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. We'd love to come back and have another chat.
Okay. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you'd like to know more about Peter Hogg and Aware Super, visit aware.com.au. That's aware, aware.com.au, or feel free to email me on admin@themoneysandwich.com, or visit our website, themoneysandwich.com, if you have any questions or would like to learn more. Visit my website, themoneysandwich.com, for free templates, online calculators, and subscribe to our newsletter to help you now for a better retirement tomorrow. As with every podcast, this information is not advice, as not personalised to your own situation. And past performance is never guaranteed for the future. What we are trying to do here is to provide tips, coaching, and education to help improve your money knowledge, which we believe can only be a good thing. See you next time when we take another bite from the Money Sandwich.